This is something that has left many shocked in its wake. Imagine the sitting president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, being thrown out of parliament, the very chamber that symbolizes the heart of democracy. A move of this kind does not just rattle political insiders. It shakes a nation and catches the world's attention. But how did things spiral to this point? What could have caused such a dramatic and humiliating moment for a sitting head of state? Much more is involved here than just politics. This is power, betrayal, accountability, and a fight for the soul of South Africa's democracy. The story of that explosive moment begins long before Ramaphosa entered Parliament with his usual calm composure, a man known for his measured tone and polished speeches. But the atmosphere in the chamber was different that day. Electric, almost combustible. Members of opposition parties were restless, their whispers growing into murmurs and soon into loud objections as the president took the podium. They had been preparing for this confrontation, waiting for the right moment to challenge him directly, and this sitting would become the stage for their most dramatic stand yet. From the very first words of his address, Ramaphosa was interrupted. Chants rose from the opposition benches and questions were held at him, not in the usual parliamentary tone, but with a sharpness that cut through the air. The accusations were heavy allegations of corruption, mismanagement, and the controversial handling of state resources. Ramaphosa tried to steady himself, maintaining his trademark composure, but the noise grew louder, drowning his voice. What began as heckling quickly escalated into outright chaos, and soon the entire chamber was consumed in shouting and finger-pointing. The Speaker of Parliament called for order, banning the gavel repeatedly, but it was clear the opposition had no intention of backing down. The opposition demand was simple. Ramaphosa should leave. They would not allow his presence in Parliament. The fact that he could stand before them and deliver an address when so many questions about his conduct remained unanswered was illegitimate. The members in red berets pointed toward the president and shouted, "You must go." The chamber erupted with cameras capturing the moment, and social media exploding just minutes later with clips spreading like wildfire. And obviously shaken but attempting to compose himself, Ramaphosa paused and looked sideways at the speaker for a way out. The speaker, in an impossible position, was torn between keeping parliamentary procedures and the overwhelming defiance of the opposition. As tension continued to rise and the atmosphere threatened to get physical, the speaker made a stunning announcement. The president would have to withdraw. It was a moment when the unthinkable happened. Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa, was escorted out of Parliament under the watchful eyes of his political rivals, journalists, and millions of citizens glued to their screens. The symbolism of that moment cannot be overstated. For a sitting president to be thrown out of Parliament sends shock waves through the nation. It is not just a procedural matter. It is public humiliation, a direct challenge to his authority and a sign of the deep fractures within South Africa's political system. Analysts immediately described it as unprecedented, while opposition parties held the step as a victory for accountability. To Ramaphosa supporters, it was a bitter pill to swallow, a scene they never thought they'd see in their lifetime. But to understand why this moment hit so hard, we need to trace the events that led here. Ramaphosa has long been under pressure over allegations that have haunted his presidency. From the controversial failure farm scandal to the growing frustration over unemployment, inequality, and load shedding, his leadership has come under constant fire, with each controversy taking another chip out of the public's faith in his ability to lead. Opposition leaders have accused him of evading responsibility, of hiding behind carefully crafted speeches while South Africans suffer. In their view, today's dramatic removal was not just about political theater. It was a long overdue reckoning. Still, it raises disturbing questions. What does it mean for South Africa's democracy when even the head of state cannot address Parliament without being forced out? A sign of healthy resistance and accountability. Or does it reveal a system teetering on the edge of dysfunction? Public opinion is deeply divided. Some see the opposition's actions as brave, a bold stand against a leader they believe has failed the people. Others view it as reckless, disrespectful, and a dangerous precedent that undermines the very fabric of governance. On the streets, reactions were immediate. In Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban, ordinary citizens debated the shocking scenes over radios, in taxis, and on social media platforms. Hashtags like #Ramaphosa thrown out and #Parliament chaos trended for hours. Memes flooded timelines, some mocking the president, others defending him. The country's mood oscillated between disbelief, anger, and dark humor, a reflection of how politics in South Africa often mirrors its social tensions. Political commentators filled TV and radio broadcasts analyzing the fallout and what it means for the ANC, South Africa's ruling party. Is this the beginning of the end of Ramaphosa's presidency, or just another chapter in the messy reality of South African politics? Ramaphosa supporters within the ANC came out in force to defend him, calling the opposition's actions shameful and saying that the president remains committed to finding solutions for the country's problems. But behind closed doors, whispers of doubt grew louder. If a leader cannot command parliament, for how long can he command the country? Opposition parties, especially the EFFDA, were jubilant, claiming that they had exposed Ramaphosa's weakness and proven that he cannot escape accountability. Their supporters celebrated outside Parliament, waving banners and chanting slogans that echoed across the city. The air was thick with both triumph and tension as police increased security around the precinct to prevent clashes between rival groups. For Ramaphosa, the road ahead is treacherous. Being thrown out of Parliament is not just an embarrassing headline. It's a scar that will follow his presidency forever. His credibility has been dented, his authority questioned, and his political rivals emboldened. Every future appearance in Parliament will carry the shadow of this incident. Every speech he delivers will be scrutinized against the memory of the day he was forced to walk out. Yet in moments like these, politics can shift dramatically. Some leaders crumble under such humiliation while others rise from the ashes using the very crisis that threatened to destroy them as fuel to fight back. Ramaphosa now faces a choice. Retreat into damage control and risk fading into irrelevance, or confront his critics head-on and attempt to reclaim his authority. The nation waits to see which path he will take. For now, an ANC moment of reckoning beckons. Once the embodiment of the hopes of a democratic South Africa, it is now seen by many as synonymous with dysfunction and disunity. Younger South Africans frustrated with corruption and unemployment are abandoning traditional politics altogether. The sight of their president being escorted out of Parliament only reinforces the sense that leadership has lost touch with the people. Inside ANC corridors, senior members are reportedly divided. Some urging Ramaphosa to step down for the good of the party, others rallying around him and warning that conceding to pressure would hand victory to the opposition. Meanwhile, opposition leaders are capitalizing on the moment. Julius Malema of the Economic Freedom Fighters declared it a historic day of justice, while the DA leadership described it as a necessary stand for accountability. But critics warn that the spectacle of disorder could backfire, painting Parliament as a battleground of chaos rather than a house of governance. South Africans already weary from years of political infighting may see the entire political class as incapable of governing responsibly. Reactions from the international community have been swift. Global media called the event one of the most extraordinary moments in post-apartheid history. Diplomatic observers have expressed concern about what this may mean for investor confidence and political stability. Ramaphosa, once held as a reformer who could clean up the corruption of his predecessors, is now fighting for his political survival. The question at this moment is no longer just about his leadership. It is whether the democracy of South Africa could take such turbulence. The dust has settled and Parliament will go back to work. The ANC will reorganize and opposition parties will come back stronger in the next session. Backroom negotiations are already underway to try to contain the fallout, with Ramaphosa's advisors reportedly working on a statement that the president hopes will restore public confidence and his detractors preparing for even more fighting. But no amount of spin can remove the image of a president being escorted out of the chamber. It is an image that has become a symbol, one that will continue to haunt the legacy of the president and define this chapter in the story of South Africa. As South Africans reflect upon this extraordinary event, one thing is clear. The Sir Ramaphosa story and his tempest-tossed presidency are decidedly not over. Whether this moment marks the beginning of his downfall, or it ushers in a dramatic comeback, only time will tell. But this much is assured. History will remember the day Parliament turned its back on the president, and the world watched as the South African democracy faced one of its most defining tests.